Project 6 is the feed reader testing project. And after the map, I got to say that this project is a lot less intimidating. It's actually pretty straightforward and fairly easy. There's a few little gotchas in there that you got to be careful of, specifically with sort of the asynchronous tests. But overall, I think this project is quite a bit easier than the map because you're really not starting from scratch. You're starting from a project that's been handed to you that you need to write tests for, so then you can begin expanding on it more. And believe it or not, I would say this is pretty common that you might like get a piece of code or you're working on a project and you know someone hasn't put time to add tests to it and you're asked to write tests for it. I know I'm pretty bad about doing test-driven design myself. I always implement the thing and then like I should probably add a test to check that in the future, when you should be writing the test first and then implementing the tool or design or whatever you're trying to do. But specifically for this project, let's take a look at what we're going to be given here. So we're going to be given this Udacity feed site, which is your standard RSS feed with some articles from Udacity. So you can go in and read these articles. It's actually pretty usable. It's got like a little awesome pop-out side navigation. I mean, like I can follow these links and it actually takes me to the blog. So it's a pretty usable site and it actually works really well. But we need to actually add some tests in here to make sure these things stay working well when we want to add extra functionality to it. And as you can see on the bottom here, there's sort of this big gray block section, this little Jasmine symbol, and this is sort of our test suite inspector section. So in this project, we're going to be using a testing suite called Jasmine, and it's really awesome. I really like it. It makes writing tests really simple and in a very readable way. Like writing the tests almost feels like writing a sentence, which is fantastic. And you can see here that I'm not failing anything. So I know the tests I've written are working correctly. Awesome. But let's talk a little bit about sort of what we're expecting for this project and what might be some gotchas in the rubric that we can clear up now. So the first criteria we're looking for is test coverage. We're asking that the required tests for the project are all provided and are comprehensive enough to adequately test the functionality. This part should be pretty straightforward. Mike Wales went through a lot of effort to make sure the comments were very clear on what functionality we're trying to solve and what we're looking for. And so you should definitely read the comments and then work on what test you want to create. The sort of gotcha part, I think, is in the exceed specification. So if you're looking for your project to really exceed what we're asking for, we ask that students add additional tests beyond those required that adequately test additional features within the application. Students should provide documentation within the README describing these features. One of the things we said right in here that I think students are a little like, whoa, do I have to actually do this? Is you can actually write tests for future features you plan to add. So if there's something that you don't like about the RSS feed, or you can think of a way to improve it, or maybe there's some sort of feed reader that you've seen out there that you really like, and there's some functionality that you think would be really cool to add, you can write a test for that. And then we get the question back all the time is, okay, well, do I actually have to implement that? Or do I just have to write the test for it? And we're saying you only have to write the test for it, but in the README, please describe what that feature would be, what the test is looking for, and explain in a little bit of detail about how you might go implementing that feature. You don't have to implement it though, but we would like you to have sort of a clear idea of what that feature is and what kind of test you would need to test it out with. The next thing is test results, and that's all required tests for the project passed. This is pretty easy. If you've written all the tests successfully, you should see that when you load the project, that Jasmine area doesn't come up with any errors. It's all going to be green. It's going to say that all 8 specs passed. That should be a pretty good indicator that you're on the right track there. As far as the exceeding specifications for that section, if student adds additional tests, these tests are allowed to fail, as they may be testing for future features that have not been developed. So that goes back to, right, do I actually have to create these? No, you don't. It's okay if those ones fail as well, because these aren't features that you've implemented yet. The rest is pretty straightforward. I mean, code quality, I think at this point you guys have read through the style guide plenty of times, or are already writing code that's decently styled. Comments, right, should be pretty straightforward. Make sure you do comment your code, and make sure to add comments if you're doing anything really strange. And then make sure to include a README with this project, especially if you're looking to exceed and you need to explain those future features. So one thing I always like to do when demoing this project is kind of show you how you can test to make sure your specs are actually working. So it's always nice when you write a spec and it's passing. So it's really cool when your page looks like this and everything's passing, but you might be asking yourself, did what I do actually work? So an easy way to test that, pop open our terminal here and open up our project, is to break the project itself. So if we look inside our feed reader, we should see that we have a test here that says that all the feeds should be defined and all the feeds length shouldn't be 0. In this test, what we're looking for is that all our feeds are to be defined and all feeds length not to be 0. So let's figure out where all feeds are. So if we look in our app.js file, we'll see that there's this variable defined called all feeds. And according to our test spec, we're saying that this should be defined. So let's just delete this and save, and go back to our test here and refresh and see what happens. Oh gosh, so many failures. But specifically, we see that reference error, all feeds is not defined. So we can see that that is breaking successfully. And we can see that, right, when we put it back, that test is working properly. It detected correctly that all feeds wasn't defined. It also says, right, that all feeds length shouldn't be 0. So if we go in and have it defined but have nothing in it, we should see a bunch more failures, and we can see that, right, expected 0 not to be 0. And we can see that, right, that's part of our RSS feeds are defined testing suite. So let's go back and fix that, and we can see, cool, that's sort of being checked, or that is being checked correctly. So when you're writing your tests, it's good to kind of go through and explore the app.js code a little bit and understand what the code is doing. You can also explore the actual app and use the developer tools to look at these files. But I like looking at it in Sublime Text just because it's really pretty. Same thing with the HTML. I mean, there's going to be a few tests that you have to do to look at specific HTML elements and if certain classes are defined. So be sure to go through the HTML and make sure that you understand a little bit about what this site is doing. That way you can properly test it, right? It does no good to not either have a clear idea of what you're implementing or have a clear idea of what's implemented and then start writing tests. You need to start somewhere, and it's always good to kind of understand the app that you've been given before you begin writing tests for it.